All right, everybody, welcome to Module 1 of our SEO course, Understanding SEO. So before we get into the actual practical step-by-step guides behind this course, first we have to have a basic understanding of what makes SEO work. If you remember in our last lesson, we talked about what SEO stands for. It's search engine optimization. And really what that comes down to is all the techniques that build trust with Google so that Google shows your website in the search results. So let's get started and dive in, okay? Number one, effective SEO comes down to one thing, and that is trust. Trust with Google. If Google trusts your site to be good, they will send you traffic. If they do not, they will send you no one. And trust is really composed of two main factors, authority and relevance. And we're going to break down exactly what is involved in each of those. Authority is essentially whether Google thinks that you are an expert on the topic, whether you are a business with credibility, whether you have been in existence for a while. It's a bunch of different factors. And relevance, obviously, is whether or not the term that is being searched for lines up with your business or website. So for example, if you're a wedding photographer and someone types in helicopter pilot, you are probably not going to show up even if you have authority because you are not relevant. Whereas if you're a wedding photographer and someone types wedding photography in your city, but you have poor SEO and Google doesn't know you're a wedding photographer, well, again, you are not going to show up because you have neither authority or relevance. So the question then is, what builds trust? So there are 10 key areas that Google looks at to determine your authority and relevance and develop that trust. We're going to look at those today, break them down, and in future videos, step by step, we're going to cover each of them and show you some steps you can take to address and build trust with Google. So here are 10 main factors Google looks at when they're determining your authority and your relevance. Okay, we're going to pop up this list and I'm going to talk you through the basics of what each mean. The first is site age. How long your website has been around. So the reason Google looks at this is because if your website was made yesterday or a week ago, it's only been around for a hot second, and Google says, well, this might be a scam, or this business might be out of business 6 months from now. So we're just going to hold off before we show this on the front page of our search results because we don't want to send people to a business we don't trust yet. So that is number one, site age. And we're going to look at some different ways we can address each of these in future videos. Second is active content. Whether or not your site was just made, Google is still looking at your content to see if it's fresh. So if you've been around since 1995, but your last post was in January of 2003, your content is not active. And if people are not searching it, not currently engaging it, Google says, well, this can't be very relevant. Otherwise, there would be more activity on this website. So that can be whether the posts are new and fresh or whether visitors are commenting, sharing, etc. Number three, we have load times. How quickly your website loads actually affects what Google thinks and how it rates your website. Whether you show up in search results can massively be impacted by how fast your website loads. Backlinks is probably the core of all SEO, and the largest factor out of all of these is the backlinks that your site has. Now, what is a backlink, you ask? Let's say that I found a funny article online and I have a blog about funny articles and I share that link on my blog. I'm directing customers or users towards that blog post. And then Google says, well, obviously this piece of content must be relevant and it must have authority because it's being shared by other websites. So that's what a backlink is. Anytime anyone, anywhere links to your website, that's a backlink. However, different backlinks have different amounts of kind of link juice is the term we'd use in SEO. But really what that comes down to is Google trusts backlinks from really significant websites more than they trust a backlink from a brand new website or a backlink from social media, etc. So where your backlinks come from really does matter as well, but primarily the number of backlinks is the key indicator to whether or not your site is ranking. So if you aren't ranking and all of these other things seem to be working for you, it's probably you just need to build some backlinks and you'll see results very quickly. Moving on, our next is kind of in line with this, social interaction. Whether people are engaging with your posts, sharing them on Facebook, talking about them, tweeting them, hashtagging them, Google does look at that. They look at all the data from traffic sources everywhere. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is, they are looking at it. We already covered search relevance, which is basically whether your topic is relevant to the search that is being inquired about. Now, one thing about search relevance is Google looks at your pages and your content to determine whether or not it's relevant to certain topics. So if I have a website on well, wedding photography, and all of my articles are on weddings in Maine, I'm probably never going to show up when someone searches for an LA wedding photographer because I've never referenced LA in my posts. Even though I might have really great backlinks, really great load times, really great site age, it all comes down to whether or not my content is relevant. So if you aren't using what's called keywords, which would be LA wedding photographer in this case, in your content somewhere, Google doesn't know you're relevant. So that's something we'll look at as well. Traffic is a key indicator to Google whether people trust your site, use your site. Google trusts you more if you're popular. So you want to be one of the popular kids when it comes to website design, and this is kind of the irony, chicken or the egg kind of situation. If you don't have traffic, you're not going to rank. However, if you don't rank, you don't get traffic. So we're going to look at different ways to get traffic to your site to begin with and get that started for Google. Just 3 more to go. Our next is security, and that is basically whether your website has an HTTPS certificate or HTTP. Now, you don't need to worry about what those terms mean. Basically, the S stands for secure, and we'll show you how to do that. It's really quick, simple, and makes a big difference. So that's a big advantage you will get from doing this. Next, we have direct Google searches. Whether people are searching for yourname.com actually is something Google looks at to determine whether or not you are relevant and have authority. And lastly, we have click-through and bounce rate. These are 2 different terms used in SEO. Click-through is essentially how many people land on your website and click through to another page, and then go to another page after that and another page after that. Basically, the more people are using and interacting with your site, Google says, oh, this must have great content on it. I'm going to link people to these pages because when they go here, they spend a lot of time here. And bounce rate is how many people spend a second on your website and then they hop off right away because obviously it wasn't what they were looking for. Or at least that's what Google says. So if someone lands on your homepage and doesn't go anywhere else on your website and they only spend 10, 15 seconds on your website, Google actually dings you. They say, oh, that couldn't have been what they were looking for. I won't show the next person searching for that because this person didn't like it, obviously. So those are the 10 main factors we're going to work on, and we're going to break down step by step how we can address and build each of those. So what it all comes down to is Google is smart. They're looking at a lot of different factors here and weighing them all together. There's no secret hot sauce you can pour onto your website and just instantly fix things, and you can't really cheat the system. It used to be that you could insert keywords again being the search terms that you want to rank for, and you could write those search terms 1,500 times on your website, and all of a sudden you would just get linked to. However, Google doesn't do that anymore. They can see through that. And so we have to create actual engaging content, have actual people interacting with and sharing it, and then Google starts to trust our website. So because Google is smart, they know exactly what happens normally when a website is born. So this is what happens normally when a website is created. The site is created. They create some content, and then that content gets shared, whether that's by blogs, websites, other businesses, on directories, and people slowly start using that site. So Google is watching this whole process unfold. And now as users start using the site, they start searching for different things directly related to that business. They start sharing more posts. And so it's kind of this circular effect where the more content you create that gets shared, the more visitors you find, the more shares you get, etc. And Google's watching as a website slowly evolves and grows its customer base. And so what we're going to do in our SEO course is actually kind of follow a similar step. We're going to speed up the process, but we're going to do the effectively same thing. So here's our SEO game plan. This is what it all comes down to. This is what we're going to be doing here as we work together to rank your website. Step 1, we are going to research and roadmap. So desired keywords, and keywords again are search terms that you want to rank for. We're going to plan those out. Once we know what your desired customer is actually searching for, we are going to take a look at your website before we do anything else, and we're going to say, okay, what is working and what's not? We're going to create a SEO-friendly web design if necessary, or if you don't have a web design yet, we're going to look at some great things and best practices. And finally, we are going to create a content game plan. So essentially, we find a search term that we want to rank for. For instance, I live in Kelowna, Canada. Let's say I want to be a Kelowna wedding photographer. Well, I'm going to create content specifically around that keyword. Okay, so this is the step that most photographers miss. They create their website. They might have a few keywords spruced up into their images, but they don't actually create content. They don't create shareable content that starts generating traffic and building trust with Google. So that is step 1. We're going to create your roadmap. Step 2 of the whole process is we're going to create then and optimize your content. So we're going to take a look at what we can do to create viral worthy content. Things that people want to share. Once you have content that is being shared, all of a sudden everything gets so much easier. And Finally, we will optimize that content for search. So there are specific things that Google is looking for, and we're going to talk about everything involved with that. There's keywords, there's metadata, there's image alt text, there's heading tags, all that fun stuff. We're going to explain it. It's going to be super simple, don't worry, and we are going to do that. Finally, once we have optimized and created our content, we are going to start generating traffic and social shares. So I'm going to show you some methods you can use to get people interacting with your content, to build valuable backlinks, and to complete the cycle. Remember, it's a cycle where if you have traffic, Google looks at you and starts ranking you so you get more traffic. So first we have to build the traffic, and we'll start that wheel rolling. And once it's rolling, it's really far easier to rank and to sustain. So to recap everything we covered in this module, ranking comes down to trust. That's all it is. If Google trusts your website, you have authority and you have relevance, Google is going to rank your site. It's as simple as that, guys. So here are the 10 keys to trust. Remember, we've got site age, active content, load times, backlinks, social interaction, search relevance, traffic, security. You get it. There's a lot to go through in here, but we're going to cover each of those individually. It's going to be great. And finally, our strategy is going to be researching and road mapping our keywords, our content, our SEO best practices. After that, we are going to create and optimize content around those keywords that we have found. And finally, we are going to build traffic and social shares to get that cycle rolling, to build that authority and trust. Once we've done that, you will start ranking. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Head over to the next video.